So, welcome this morning. This is the pre-bid informational meeting for Locksmith Services for the Department of City Development. We'll do some brief introductions of DCD staff on this meeting, and then I'll go through some important information in the bid document, and then at the end, if there's any questions, we can go over it at that time. So with that, I will start. My name is Scott Stange. I am the Procurement and Compliance Manager for the Department of City Development. Celeste?
Good morning, I'm Celeste Jantz. I'm a purchasing agent with the Department of City Development.
Hello, I'm Cindy Wright-Smith, Property Management Supervisor.
All right. Well, I will, so I'm going to share my screen with the bid document, and I'm going to kind of go through certain parts of the document here. So excuse me, first thing I want to do is just go over some important dates for this bid. The submittal of the bids are due no later than June 27th, 2024 at 11 a.m. They are to be submitted by email to dcdpurchasing@milwaukee.gov. They must be received by 11 a.m. So in the planning of submitting your bid, please make sure that you allow enough time for your email to go through to come and be received by the Department of City Development, because the deadline of 11 a.m. is when we receive it. So say, for example, if you submit your bid at 10:58 and we don't get it until 11:01 a.m., it is considered late. So I can't stress enough to anyone looking to submit a bid to make sure that you allow for enough time for your bid to kind of make its way through the email universe and arrive in our in basket. So again, the deadline is June 27th, 2024 at 11 a.m. to be submitted to the email address on the screen, dcdpurchasing@milwaukee.gov. The other date that's important is there will be a Q&A after this presentation, but if there are any questions that are thought of after this meeting, they can be submitted via email to Celeste, who introduced herself earlier. Her email address is cejantz@milwaukee.gov. And there is a deadline for the questions. It's June 17th, 2024 at 4:45 p.m. So if you have any questions after this meeting, make sure to get them to Celeste before that date. And then if there are any substantive changes to the bid as a result of the question and answers, then we will submit an addendum. We'll post an addendum, I should say, on the same website that you can find the bid document, and we'll post that before the end of the day on June 18th. So just to recap, the bids are due June 27th at 11 a.m. and that the deadline for any subsequent questions from today would be June 17th at 4:45 p.m. I want to now just go over briefly page 3 of the bid document, which is the bid submittal checklist. This outlines the documents that need to be submitted in order for your bid to be considered responsive. It's a short list, but all important anyway. In the bid document is the invitation to bid form, which is where you will indicate your bidder's unit prices. and then the total sum as a result of those prices and the formula that's in the bid document, and I'll go over that briefly. And then the signature page. So you're going to want to fill out the invitation to bid form, fill out all your unit prices, tally up your bid total sum from the formula, and then also there's a separate page that's considered the signature page. Those are the two documents that you must submit with your bid. There are two procurement preference programs that apply to this bid. One is called the Local Business Enterprise LBE, and the second is Socially Responsible Contractor, also referred to as SRC. I won't go over those in detail because they are information is available in the bid document. They are not mandatory, but if they apply to you, then I would look to learn a little bit more about them in the bid document and then submit the appropriate paperwork as described in the bid document. So now I'm going to go to the unit prices that are part of this bid. There are 10 unit prices. You can find a description of them starting on page 14. They go through to the bottom of page 15. And I'm going to go over two of these unit prices in particular. The rest of them are fairly self-explanatory, and you can read them at your leisure. So the city of Milwaukee, if you own property in the city of Milwaukee and you don't pay your property taxes for a certain amount of time, the city can and does go to court to take title to that property. Any properties then that are now titled to the city is then responsible for them, just like any other, landlord within the city. The Department of City Development, in particular, Cindy Wright-Smith and her staff, are responsible for maintaining those properties and inspecting those properties and responding to calls from tenants that may be living in those properties. And so when the city takes title to the properties, they will do them in bulk lists. So by that, I mean, there may be a list of maybe 100, 150 properties at one time. And then throughout the year, there may be anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 separate lists. So with each list, Cindy and her staff, excuse me, will need to go out and inspect the properties. And so unit price number 2 is kind of explains where the locksmith plays a part in those inspections. Unit price 2 is an hourly rate in which the locksmith would be required to take would be required to be at the inspections. This is these are dates and times are set up in advance with Cindy's staff and the locksmith contractor. They usually start around 9:30 in the morning. There's roughly 4 or 5 separate properties done at a time that require inspections. So it's usually about 9:30 to 1:30. The ending time kind of varies depending on how fast the inspections go. So what unit price 2 represents is the hourly rate that you would charge the city to be with Cindy and her team at these inspections of the properties on that day. So what that means is at 9:30 you would meet Cindy, and I believe there's also a representative from the Department of Neighborhood Services. So the three of you would meet at the first house, and then Cindy would ask you to perform various locksmith services that would be in unit prices 3 through 10. These these will vary depending on the property and the needs of the property. So at the starting point of your invoice for the work under unit price 2, you would list the properties that you were at, you would list the time that you spent at each one, and then depending on the specific work that Cindy had you do at each property under unit prices 3 through 10, then you would list those on a per property basis in your invoice. And then, so you would get paid the hourly rate for unit price 2 during the entire time that you are with that city team doing the inspections. And then any subsequent work in unit prices 3 through 10 would also be on the invoice that you would get paid. The second unit price that's on the screen is unit price number 1. So in addition to being at the properties and doing the work at the time of the inspections, the locksmith contractor will also be on call to the Department of City Development to respond to any locksmith specific calls that we would get from a tenant not related to an inspection. And so at such time that Cindy would get a call from a tenant needing locksmith services, Cindy or someone on her staff would reach out to the locksmith contractor and have them go out on a service call. And then based off of the actual work that would be needed, that would be again outlined in either any of the unit prices in numbers 3 through 10. So the unit price 1 is the hourly rate for the service call. That's on a work order basis. And then the exact work that would be done during that service call would also be outlined in the invoice. That'd be unit prices 3 through 10. So again, unit price 2 is directly related to the work that's done during the inspections, and unit price number 1 is the work that's done on a work order basis. So there are 10 unit prices. I'm not going to go through each one of them. These should be self-explanatory to those firms experienced in locksmith servicing. There are some additional things here at the end that we would have contractors provide just as a course of doing the business. And lock boxes and padlocks are materials that are provided by the city. So the next thing I want to do is just go through this formula. What the formula represents is we tried to take a hypothetical house and apply where each unit price might fit in a hypothetical house. So when you submit your unit price on the bid form, you'll have these prices. These prices that are listed in this table are just for example purposes. These are no way to influence your pricing, but these are example pricing for the sake of this formula. So your unit prices would be listed in the bid form, which is earlier in the bid document. And then the formula is based off of these columns right here. So for unit price number 1, you would multiply it by 1. Unit price 2, you would multiply it by 0.5. Unit price 3, you would multiply it by 3, and so on through the end of the formula. And then you would come up with a total of all of those, and then you would multiply that total by 200. So there's a couple different areas of multiplication. One is in each unit price, and then those unit prices would be totaled, and then that total would be multiplied by 200, and then the number that comes from that is called your base bid total sum. And that is the total amount that we will be looking at to compare one bid to another in determining the lowest responsible and responsive bid. So again, the formula, you can find that on page 16. It's also on the actual bid form up at the beginning of the bid document. The last thing I want to go over real briefly, or just point out specifically, is in the general requirements of the bid section, it talks about the insurance, and it lists the insurances that the city will require at such time that the contract is signed. So please familiarize yourself with these insurance requirements, the policies, and the policy limits. These are the insurance requirements that, if awarded the contract, you would need to provide certificates of insurance showing that you are currently holding those policies. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the bid form document. So the invitation to bid for document with your unit prices, I talked about this in a couple different locations, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just go over that briefly. This is the invitation to bid form. It's on page 4. That would where you fill out information about your business. And then starting on page 5 is where you would do your individual unit prices. Again, based off, that formula. These are the actual per hour or per unit pricing. They go through unit price all the way to number 11. And then you take those unit prices and insert them into this formula, which is the same formula that was on that table that I showed you earlier. And then that computes one specific number that is referred to as your base bid total sum. That would get put in on this line right here. And then finally is the signature page. That is, it's entitled signature page, so it shouldn't be hard to find. And this is where you would fill out the information about your company, make sure you sign that, and then indicate the capacity of the person that signed it, and then date it. So you would need to do your invitation to bid form with unit prices and your signature page as reflected in the bid submittal checklist. So that completes the my presentation. Cindy, is there anything else that you would like to add that I might have missed?
The only thing I think I can make mention is that we don't really do a lot of tenant requests as far as going back and doing any kind of work regarding tenants, but we do have you go back and change locks on properties for whatever reason. So it's not a lot of communication with actual tenants, but it is that work does get done. I don't want you to think that it's a lot of back and forth with tenants, but it is that number 1, not just number 2, but the number 1 where it states that we have the service charge where you go. Yeah, thank you. This one, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you going back to. So the unit price number 1 where it states that you have the work orders. Those work orders is not necessarily with tenants, but there are work orders. It's not just going out and doing the inspections and doing the locksmith duties that way. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not just tenants.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
But that's the only thing I really wanted to make mention. Other than that, you did a really good job, Scott.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. All right, so I think that's it for the presentation. Celeste, is there anything that you could think of? Okay.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, Sonia, I don't know if you had any questions in regard to that. If so, then if you want to unmute yourself, we could go over those.
Are there any performance bonds required?
There are not, no.
And my only other question was about LBE, but I can address that later. I know there's a number provided I can call with any questions.
Any questions that you might have, please email them to Celeste. And just so that they're in writing, and then we avoid any, miscommunication or misinterpretation of the question. And you'll find Celeste's email in the bid document.
Perfection. Okay. And that'll do it for any questions I have.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and attending the info session. And that will conclude the Locksmith bid info session. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a good day, rest of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.